All right, folks, today we got an exciting video ahead. Large language models. Is this the end of programming? This is a talk by Dr. Matt Welsh that took place at CS50. I've been wanting to watch this video for a while, but I was holding myself off from watching it because I want to watch it with you guys and react to it with you guys because I think this is going to be amazing. So I'm really excited to watch it. So it's going to be real time. We're going to watch it together, and I'm going to break down my thoughts on whether the end of programming is here or not and what my thoughts are on that. So with that said, let's just jump right into it. And before we begin, I do want to let you know that if you want to learn how to build apps with ChatGPT and AI and learn how to use that to make money in as little as 8 weeks with those skills, like a bunch of my students have, like Naze, who's in the course right now, that within 30 minutes of joining, he actually built his first app. So if you want to be able to learn those types of things, I put together a free training for you where I'll give you 3 AI SaaS app ideas that you could actually build this week. I'll also show you the best ways where you can build an app, production ready app that would have taken people months, and how you could actually do that within a couple of days. All of that stuff and more in the free training that I've put together for you. So go ahead, click the link below and sign up for that free training. With that said, let's continue.
So I'm here to tell you that the field of computer science is doomed.
That's a banger.
Okay? And I actually kind of mean this, although I'm going to put it in somewhat humorous terms, that if you think about computer science, what is the field about? What does it mean? Where did it...
Before he even continues, I just want to add here, like, let's see where he's going to go with it, right? But look at that, translating ideas into program. That's what computer science has always been about. And so if you go back in the day, before it was playing with logic gates directly, then we went to a higher level language, which was like assembly. And then after assembly, we got higher level languages like Java. And then we started getting languages like JavaScript and Python. And so if you look, we kept going higher and higher level than bits and bytes. So just pure sheer logic. Think through that. Think through the evolution of vehicles and technology, automotive technology. You had people walking. Then you had people probably trying to ride a fucking turtle and realizing you can't ride it. Shit. Somebody probably tried to ride a cheetah and lions and they died. And somebody tried to ride a rhinoceros and died. And finally, they figured out that horse is the thing that you can ride. Like, how insane do you have to be, right, to try that? Like, who the fuck was the first person to discover that a horse could be rode and trained? Like, so many people died probably just trying to figure that out. And then you had horses, and then you had the next level up, which ended up becoming like these carriages. You could just sit inside the carriage while the horse dragged it. And then horsepower and the thought of the carriages and the horses, and they're like, what if we could just turn it where it doesn't even need a horse? And then it turned into automobiles, and then automobiles were like this great thing. And then we discovered, I don't know what the order of it is, right, but like we discovered trains at some point, and we figured out airplanes at some point, and we just figured out faster and faster and better travel. Before you had to swim, and then they figured out boats. And so I just think about it like that: logic gates, assembly, JavaScript, AI. Right? And the idea of AI is turning natural language ideas into programs. So that's just what I'm thinking. Let's keep going.
come from? What is it? What's the core idea of it? It's the idea of taking an idea, an algorithm or a concept or a data structure, and translating it into a program that can generally be run by like a von Neumann architecture machine, right? Okay, so that's computer science in a nutshell. The problem is that the goal of CS has always had this kind of core fundamental assumption or axiom, that is that the programs that we're all talking about here have been implemented, maintained, and have to be understood by humans. right? That if I print out the code for a program, a human, some human, maybe not everyone, but at least maybe the person who wrote it, if not someone else, can understand it. Now humans suck at all three of these things. We're terrible at writing programs, we're terrible at maintaining them, and we're absolutely terrible at understanding them. So what does that really mean for the field? So I want to make this claim that 50 years of research into programming languages has done effectively nothing to solve this problem. We've been at this for a long time now. 50 years is a long time. And we keep inventing new languages and new programming concepts and new abstractions and new data types and new proof methodologies. But
so what does this mean? This means that, remember, before we had JavaScript, we had Java, right? And we had all these other languages. We had assembly. And then it was like, okay, we need to take assembly and make it easier so humans can write easier if-then statement than figuring out where to allocate memory for this if-then statement. And so we got higher level, and then it became easier. And then we went even more higher level, right, with JavaScript and Python, etc. But basically his point is that that 50 years has effectively done nothing. We got TypeScript and we got React to make JavaScript easier. And then we got Next to even make that easier. And then there's a framework for every single thing, Angular. And while these are leaps and incremental improvements, and it does make programming easier, these are not quantum leaps. I think that's what he's trying to say here, particularly, right? No amount of improvement to type systems, debugging, static analysis, linters, or documentation is going to magically solve this problem is the idea here.
Solve this problem, and I don't think another 50 years is going to solve it. I think this idea of building automated tools to help humans write better software has played itself out.
Valid.
Now, if you disagree with me, let's just take a look at kind of the history here. So let's rewind the clock all the way back to 1957. This is Conway's Game of Life implemented in Fortran. I don't remember which dialect of Fortran this is, but Fortran came about in about 1957. I just claim this is really hard to understand.
Yeah, that. Let me see if I can try to understand this. So do something 200 times between the range of 1 and 10,000? I don't know if that's right or not. Call off tag if CDA 7.eq.14 go to 300. Holy shit. Yeah, I'm lost. There's something like database type that I see here. Database type. Yeah, I'm kind of lost. I mean, I see if, and else, and then that has a nested if and all that, and then continue. But yeah, it's real hard to understand what's happening. And I imagine it's something you're kind of doing at a pretty low level.
I just claim this is really hard to understand. I claim that you can't look at this, and unless you had some idea of the intent of the programmer, what the hell does this do? You could work it out. You could spend some time reading it. You could probably understand it with some effort, but it's not trivial. It's not straightforward.
Yeah, his point is that regardless of how nicely the code is written, it still takes time to understand the logic of it and how it's working. So there's still a lot of computational processing required for our brains, and our brains aren't very good at that for humans. Our brain strength is creative thinking. Computers are really good at that.
Okay, so we tried to make
By that I meant programming and logic.
Programming easier. We came up with something called BASIC in 1964. This is not the original BASIC. Again, it's had many dialects because obviously the first one wasn't good enough. We had to keep improving the language.
That shit looks nasty.
This is the same program in BASIC. I don't think this is any easier to understand. Okay? I could spend some time reading it and convince myself that it does a certain thing, but it's quite challenging to get. So
that is nasty. If I had to start programming like that, I would be pretty off-put by programming.
then We came up with APL. This is Conway's game of life in APL. I would say raise your hand if you understand this, but I know there's probably a few people in the audience who do. I don't, right? This is a programming language so complex you needed a special keyboard to type it. Okay? But this is what we thought was the practice of developing programming languages back in the 60s, was this. Certainly it doesn't do the job. All right, well, I've been talking about stuff that's kind of old-fashioned. What about the new hotness? Let's talk about Rust. Everybody's programming in Rust. It's the latest and greatest thing since sliced bread. I spent 2 years running engineering at a startup that was completely Rust-based. I ran a big team full of Rust developers. I actually learned Rust myself, kind of. This is the same program in Rust. I don't make heads or tails of it.
Yeah. So basically he's saying, I'm not making heads or tails of this. So he also has similar problem with this. And yeah, I mean, even though you got some functions that make things nicer, right? You got functional programming, you got a filter, you're mapping through things, and you got something happening here. And you got a function called generation, and you have, so it returns a colony class type or colony type, something along those lines. Like this here, it returns a hash map. And so we have somewhat understanding of this, like we're making a new hash map here. But do I really know what every single thing is happening? And if I try to figure it out, it would take a long time. Like, the fuck is going on here, bro? Asterisk and sense.entry? Like, what is that? And yeah, I mean, I have not really played around with Rust, but like there's some JavaScriptiness to it and a little bit of how it's written or some Rubiness into it. But ultimately, it's still like hard to understand.
Of this. It is incredibly hard to write programs that are easy to understand, easy to maintain, easy to reason about. Okay? So that's the kind of state of the art. This is where we've gotten in 50 years, from Fortran to this. And I just want to make the claim that this is not going to work. Okay? We're done. Game over. So what's next?
I love this guy.
Well, this is how I write code today.
Let's go!
This is a prompt passed to the GPT-4.
I get so much bullshit hate if I showed you. Let's go to my Instagram, and I just want to show you the hate I get. Like, look at this. This is a post I made where I said programming will be dead soon. And I said 2028. Now, it might be 2032, 2035, but the idea is that I do think that coding as we know it is going to be dead and is going to be something different. Meaning that it might turn more into prompt engineering and idea generation. And like you could see the hate that I got, right? Influencers, what you influencers get by creating unnecessary chaos among the community. You guys are screaming like, if you don't know or don't follow this, you will be dead. This video is a reason to unfollow you. Let's go find all the nasty negative comments. God damn, this is so untrue and very misleading. So true, unfollowed with pleasure, LOL. And the list just goes on, right? I made another post just talking about all the negative comments that we got on this and so much hate. And here's what I have to say to that, right? You can choose to be, what did they call it? You could choose to be a duck and put your head in the sand and just mute everything out and just be like, everything is going to be fine. But here's the thing. All these programmers that are cuddled up in a circle jerk right now, crying in my comment section of my posts, telling me that they're unfollowing me by leaving a comment and then probably unfollowing, or probably not even unfollowing, still following, so they could just watch from the distance and fucking hate. Here's the thing. That's coping mechanism kicking in hard. And I'm not trying to spread, my idea isn't to spread chaos and fear so everybody's just frightened, is like, oh fuck. I'm just mentioning the reality, bro. Like, this is what is happening. This is how I'm writing my fucking code. I built a production ready app last month in 1 month with 100 to 150 hours of coding all by myself. And that was something that before I would have had to pay 3 to 6 developers to do over 3 months and paid 60 grand. And I know because I've done that. If you look at my channel, oh, does this guy know really what he's talking about? does this guy really know what he's talking about? Look at this. I literally every fucking day would build these apps. Who else do you know is building these apps for 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours in a row? We have so many apps that we've built, and these were live. We built these live. These aren't even all the other recorded videos that we've done. So like, it's not like I'm building software for the first time. And just some random influencer. Yeah, there's a ton of bullshit random influencers. But like, bro, like look at who's talking to you. I've been doing this for 7 to 8 years. My first year in coding, I learned it, started making 100 grand a year. And then I kept scaling it from there. So it's like, I understand coding. I get what you guys are saying. I understand. Now, let me address the hate too. The reason why I'm getting that hate is because people are scared and afraid, and maybe I'm leaning into it way too fucking hard, and maybe I need to change the tonality and maybe show more compassion. But I'm trying to wake you the fuck up, because if you are not listening, you're going to get wrecked. And my point is, you need to learn the new technologies and the new way of doing things. So if you're not doing this, meaning going and talking to ChatGPT to build out your programs and working with it or know how to do that, you're fucking behind. Here's a tweet by Amjad Masad, the founder of Replit. Okay, Replit, just in case you don't know it, an insane amount of people are using it. It's a valuation of this company is at $1 billion. It's a pretty big company. And he's the founder of this company. And he wrote this tweet on May 18th. At a hackathon where a winner, and this tweet got 1.2 million views, right? At a hackathon where a winner is a non-technical PM, product manager, and her work powered by Replit plus AI is more technically impressive than teams of engineers. Was surprised at first, but it struck me that PMs must be exceptional prompting. After all, that is their job. So I'm not telling you some random theory stuff. This is happening 9 months ago or 8 months ago, whenever you're watching this. It's January 2024 right now. This is happening. This is the truth. This is the reality. The person that won is not technical. Do you understand that? The people that are freaking the fuck out right now are all technical people. So either you can go into coping mechanism and regress and die off after a couple of years, get replaced by these product managers who will output 5 times you, don't need you, will do it for cents, and you'll be sitting there fucking broke and useless. Or, on the other side, you can learn how to use these tools so you can learn to be this effective. She made this happen and made that project happen because she could prompt engineer it, and she knew the vision of the project, and then she worked with AI to make it a reality. And that's where we're headed, where ideas are being translated into programs. So that's all I'm saying. All right, let's keep on going.
Or model. And it's part of a larger program that reads in some text of a transcript that's been derived from a podcast audio feed. We're feeding the transcript into the model, and we're giving it these instructions. We're saying, please summarize the following segment of this podcast transcript. Only use the information in the text. Do not, in caps. This is important, by the way. The all caps is super important. Do not use any information you know about the world. Include the title of the podcast, the name of the episode, and the names of the speakers, if known. This English statement here encodes an algorithm. It describes something that I want to do with an input data and the output data that I want, and my expectations about the kind of thing that's in the output data. So a few things to notice about this. The first thing to notice about this is I don't think anyone could ever write down the algorithm for what this is supposed to do in any existing programming language or any programming language that we're likely to come up with in the future. How do you write this algorithm?
Wait, really? Is that true? That's crazy. Can you not write this? Hold on. Let me just think about it. Okay, provide a 1 or 2 sentence summary. So that we could probably do with an algorithm, send it off to an AI, and it could summarize text. So that's possible. Only use the information provided in the text. Huh. That's kind of hard. I don't know how to do that through coding. That's a tough one. Like, to tell it to only use the, well, Well, I guess if the program is offline, then the only thing it has to go off of is the text, I guess. Do not use any information you know about the world. I mean, I could scope it to that specific piece of text I'm giving it. Include the title of the podcast. So I don't really know exactly what he's talking about here, but let's keep going.
You can't, right? There's no pseudocode, there's no proof, there's no mathematical symbology here, right? The other thing to notice is...
maybe I'm too dumb for that. If you know, let us know in the comments below.
At least for me, I don't know about any of you. Do you understand this? Do you understand what it's saying? Does it make sense? Can you read it? Can you reason about what it's supposed to do? Yes, of course, right? It's in plain English. Doesn't have to be English, by the way. It could be in Mandarin Chinese or Esperanto. Have you all seen the XKCD about the guy who walks into his friend's house and he says, "Okay, Alexa, order 5 tons of creamed corn. Okay, Alexa, confirm order." That's how he makes sure that no one's got a speaker listening to him. Okay, so the point being that this is now how I'm actually writing code. And what's funny about this is a lot of it is trial and error and experimentation. By the way, that's the same when I'm writing normal computer code. And the other thing that's interesting about this is there's a lot.
So yeah, trial and error is there. I mean, I do that too. That's why I'm still spending 150 hours when I was building that app, and I couldn't just do it with one prompt. There was error, then I would tell the computer again, "Hey, we got an error. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this." And I just kept working with it and making progress.
A lot of subtlety in terms of how you instruct the model and how you know what it's going to do with your instructions. You can't write a manual that says, well, here's the set of words that you need to use to get the model to do X, Y, or Z. You have to just try out certain things. In this case, I found out the "do not" in all caps really helped because I really wanted to emphasize that point to the model. This reminds me of another programming language that someone came up with a while ago called Intercal. Intercal was meant to be one of these kind of obscure or maybe satirical joke programming languages. Intercal had these interesting features.
Like brainfuck or white space.
Such as you had to use the keyword "please." And if you use the keyword "please" too often, the compiler would reject your program. If you didn't use it enough, it would also reject your program. And it turned out that feature was undocumented. It's exactly like what we're doing today, right? We have to say "please" and "do not" in all caps to get the language models to do what we want. So where am I going with all this? I think what I'm saying here is we are now in an era where we have machines that can take natural language in and produce results, algorithmic results, computational results, but for which no human has written a program in anything resembling a conventional programming language. And I claim that these models are going to get so good at doing this that our whole concept of programming computers is going to get replaced over time with instructing language models to do things for us.
Yes, that. I 100% agree with that. That's what I see happening right now. I don't remember a lot of these apps I've built over the last couple of months. I just don't remember writing code from scratch. I just really don't. I'll give you an example. It'll be like, hey, I need to make a button for a modal. When a user clicks it, it should pop this up and let them add a new to-do. Cool. And then I just I just look around, wait for the ChatGPT code to come in, grab it, put it in there. Boom, come right back. And then just, see if it works. Great, it worked. I have nothing to do. I can continue moving. If it doesn't work, come back. Didn't work. This is the error I'm getting. Wait for it to give me the code. Copy, paste. Works, cool. Mostly I'm just thinking of what feature to add, what's a new thing to add, and I'm thinking of the next steps rather than like, do I need to use map for this, or what JavaScript algorithm do I need to use to make this more efficient? Ooh, am I writing it in 2 for loops instead of 1? Oh my God, did I unsubscribe from my Firebase because I'm gonna get a read of 50,000 plus reads, and that's gonna blow through my quota, and I'm gonna end up getting charged so much. I just want to make sure that my unsubscribe is done properly. Let me just try to remember the documentation of Firebase real quick. Go to Stack Overflow and look it up by some passive aggressive nerd that wrote the top comment. Let me copy paste from him. Like, that's where a lot of my time was going. Whereas like now it's like it just does it for you and it handles it for you. And I love that. It just makes those things simpler where I shouldn't really need to use my brain for like looking up documentation, looking up all these things that just are very tedious. And it's like, I get the point of what I'm trying to do.
So let's take a look at the state of programming language technology. This is a programmer without Copilot in around 2020, colorized.
Bro, this is exactly what I've been saying. That is you. That is you, no offense, if you don't use AI and ChatGPT to help you. So whether that's Copilot or ChatGPT or any other tools that exist. There's so many other tools that exist. GPT Pilot exists. I was going to do a video on that. But that's you. This is what I was trying to say. You're on feet while I'm in a car. You're walking on your feet while I'm in a fucking yacht or on a plane traveling somewhere. And then you're trying to race with me. So that's why it's so funny. Like there's so many amazing parallels he's drawing here.
Okay, I think I met that guy out in Central Square this morning. And here's a programmer with Copilot in 2021, right? So clearly we're evolving very rapidly as a species of programmers. Unfortunately, both of these cases are male. I apologize for that. So how many people here have used Copilot or one of its ilk in terms of helping you write code? Don't be shy. I know you're like, who's my professor in here? Oh, shit. All right. So Copilot, if you haven't used it, is a complete game changer in terms of how real-world developers write code. Okay? Yes, it's also kind of a huge boost for students who want to effectively shortcut their homework, speed run. If I don't have Copilot, I absolutely feel naked. I was on the airplane out here. I was writing code.
Yeah, I just love when I'm doing Copilot. I use ChatGPT more than I use Copilot, but I also love that it can just start to finish up the thing that I'm about to write, including documentation, right? I'll be writing a documentation. It'll just autocomplete it. Or if I'm writing a function, it'll just autocomplete it. So I really like that.
The Wi-Fi was not quite fast enough, so I would type out, my half a line of code and just sort of wait for Copilot to finish it for me like I always do. But normally that happens in about like less than a second, and this time it was just taking so long I said, oh, damn it, I guess I have to write this myself, just like I used to a year ago. Copilot is incredible for a few reasons. I think one of the things that people don't fully appreciate is that it keeps you in the zone of writing code. It used to be the case that anytime I'd hit a little snag, I'd be like, oh crap, I can't quite remember the syntax for how I, reverse a list in whatever language I'm working in.
Yeah.
Crap. Well, I know where to find the answer. I'll just Google it. It's on Stack Overflow somewhere. And so I go and I Google it and I find the thing. It's probably not a direct answer, so I have to kind of read the article a little bit and kind of piece together, oh yeah, that's the snippet I was looking for.
Yeah.
And then 45 minutes later, what am I doing? I'm on Reddit somewhere. I've gone down the rat hole of surfing the internet. I got out of the zone of writing code.
Yeah.
So
there are times I go for a
keeping you
walk.
in the zone, I think people are so much more productive with this, and to the point where we mandated every developer at our company has to use Copilot.
Yes.
If there's somebody not using Copilot, they're going to be fired. Well, I didn't say that, but
Yes.
it's kind of the idea. So a lot of people
That should be the idea.
chastise or criticize Copilot for being a little dumb, right? It's like, well, it's just trained on stuff it found on the internet on GitHub and homework assignments. How good can it be?
And now I'm going to get more nerds in the comment. I don't want to give my data to anybody. I don't want to give my data to anybody. But like your data is how it's, I don't even want to get into that combat. But like I remember making a video recently and everybody went and lost their shit because I said, I love to give away my data. And you're like, that's how it gets better. Share your data. That's how it'll get better.
It's incredibly good. It's not just parroting back things that it's seen elsewhere. It's interpreting your program and your intent. It's looking at other parts of your code to understand what you might do next. It's understanding your data structures. It's not just looking at a little context window in this current file you're editing. It's looking elsewhere in the code to find something that might be relevant. And the only thing that is stopping Copilot from getting really, really, really good at this is just more data and more compute. And guess what? We have both of those in abundance.
Hell yeah.
Right? There's nothing that's going to stop this from getting incredibly good over time. So here's another kind of similar use case. This is not Copilot. This is ChatGPT, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. Mm-hmm. But if you are trying to figure out how to do something, and in this case, I was using the DeepGram Python SDK.
Again, shameless plug. If you want to learn these exact skills, how to build apps fast and use that to make money, I will show you. I've put together a free training for you. I literally show you how to build apps so damn quickly it'll make your head spin. And I've had countless students go through it and have that experience. So click the link below. You have nothing to lose. Watch that free training because you can gain so much and it can change your life profoundly. All right? Click below. I want to see you in that training. Let's keep rolling.
Okay, to transcribe audio files for this podcast thing I mentioned earlier. I could have spent 15, 20 minutes reading their documentation, finding some example code on the internet, following a tutorial, or...
Dude, that's so funny because I was literally working with DeepGram. DeepGram is actually one of the best transcription sources available. DeepGram is sick as... If any of you is trying to do something with transcriptions, look up DeepGram. It's awesome. Their API is so good.
Because we're all like, programmers are incredibly lazy. Just say, hey, look, I'm trying to do this thing. Can you just give me the code I need? And it does it. Copilot is not just understanding homework assignments. ChatGPT is not just understanding homework assignment. It like understands other people's APIs and SDKs and programming libraries and abstractions and best practices and bugs that might occur. I mean, it's really got a lot of knowledge. And so with very little...
And his GPT here is old, right? You could see cutoff is 2021. Now that GPT has been updated, cutoff is actually 2023. So GPT will know like pretty much everything, every programming language and documentation that you're looking up right now.
Effort, then I can just cut and paste this code right into my program and get on with my life. Right? Shel Silverstein, who wrote A Light in the Attic. This is something, a children's book of children's poetry that I read when I was a kid. I saw this on Reddit a couple days ago. He completely predicted this, right? This is 1981. The homework machine, oh, the homework machine, most perfect contraption that's ever been seen. Just put in your homework, then drop in a dime, snap on the switch, and in 10 seconds time, your homework comes out, quick and clean as can be. Here it is, 9 plus 4, and the answer is 3. 3, oh me, I guess it's not as perfect as I thought it would be. Exactly. Toss a dime, takes about 10 seconds, it gets the answer wrong. This is very much what we're dealing with today.
I mean, with GPT 3.5, yeah, GPT 4, it's a little bit better, but I think with 5 and GPT 6, I think it'll start to give you pretty accurate answers right away.
By the way, and this is a complete aside, but I can't resist when I mentioned Shel Silverstein. If you don't know what he looked like, this was the cover, the photo on the dust jacket of one of his first books. This guy, I love this guy. A children's poetry book author from the 70s. And that's what he looked like. Amazing. All right. So now I want to talk about, well, if this AI technology is getting so good, then what's going to happen to our industry? What does this mean for all of us who might be looking to get jobs in this industry in the future and expecting to get those, big fat paychecks and stock option grants and, buy Teslas or whatever we're expecting to do? So how much does it cost to replace one human developer with AI? Well, I did the math. So let's say that a typical software engineer salary in Silicon Valley.
Oh, that's really good. This is the juicy part. I'm excited. Let's see it.
Or Seattle's around $220,000 a year. That's just the base salary, doesn't include benefits, doesn't include equity packages, doesn't include your free lunch in your bowling alley and all that kind of stuff. So let's just assume that stuff costs $92K a year. This is again a little conservative. So the total cost to your employer is roughly $312K for one SWE. How many working days are there in a year? About 260. And so it costs $1,200 a day to employ you as a SWE at one of these companies. Fair enough?
$1,200 a day. Think about how much ChatGPT costs per day. Write as many queries as you want. Maybe $5? Maybe $3, $5? Think about that. 1,200 divided by $5. 240 times cheaper. So that means for you, they could hire 240 developers. So I mean, you know what I mean? I hope it's adding up, but I hope you're not getting scared. I want to empower you. That's the idea. It's not so you're freaked out and you're like, I should just quit and just do something else and just become a truck driver. That's not the idea. I'm trying to show you that there's a way. Let's keep going.
Okay, so let's do the math. How many lines of code do you think an average developer checks into the code base every day? I mean, finalized, tested, reviewed, and approved lines of code. Most of us who've worked in industry know that the median value is 0. Because there's so many days that you go by where you're waiting on somebody else, or you're in meetings all day, you didn't get anything done, you didn't check it in. But let's just be generous here and say it's about 100. I know 100 doesn't sound like a lot. People are like, but I was programming all day. Yes, but 90% of your code you ended up throwing out, or somebody reviewed it and said it was no good, you have to rewrite it, you were trying to figure out what to do, you were revamping it. So like the final result of your output is something like 100 lines of code a day. That's the final result. How many GPT-3 model tokens is that? It's about 10 tokens per line, more or less. So, and the cost for GPT-3.
Ooh, this is strong logic, right? Let me actually go back.
Bring out. So, like the final, how many GPT-3? So, and the cost for GPT-3 actually, this is probably a little out of date, but at the time I made this slide, it was 2 cents for 1,000 tokens. Okay, so if you do the math, then the total cost for the output of one human software developer on GPT-3 is 12 cents. This is a factor of 10,000.
12 cents. I mean, like, look, I know it's hard for maybe you or somebody who's a developer to think like this, right? But I'm a CEO, I run a company. So I think like this. If I was a developer and my entire life depended on it and it was tied to my identity, and if every dollar I made was from development, I'd be scared shitless, and I would be commenting on people's reels, telling them that they are scum for talking about the future becoming AI and going away from coding. I would be doing the same thing probably. I wouldn't, I know myself, but let's just say, okay, in some world, I might be doing something similar, or at least I could understand how you would do that and feel empowered by it and a sense of control, because you're scared your future is about to get erupted, right? Or disrupted. But as a CEO, bro, like, give me this all fucking day. I don't have to deal with their headaches. I don't have to deal with their emotional problems. A lot of developers have health problems that I have to deal with, and then it fucks up their mental stuff. They need days off. They're like so. A lot of developers are just terrible at communication. I have to, you know, somebody has to manage them and make sure that they're hitting the deadlines, and there's just so much crap. And I've hired so many software developers on my own company, and we're a small company at Clever Program, or a tiny company. Imagine companies where there's hundreds or thousands of developers, tens of thousands, right? For some companies that are big enough. But there's just so much other stuff that you have to deal with. And so for me, it's like, fuck no, I'm not doing this. I'm not hiring the developers. And that's exactly what I did when I was building my entire software, where I just built it all by myself. And most of the apps that we build are built with AI, and it costs a fraction of the price, and it's amazing. Now I will pay somebody $800 or less, and we'll build out a full app together. Whereas before, I would have paid them 10 grand over 2 months, 3 months, and it would have taken so much time, you know. So not to mention time, because people are slow and it takes them time. It's, you know, so much stuff. This thing here never sleeps. Writes better code. No days off. Right? No problems. Has no problems. Right? Essentially, there's no problems. You know what I mean? So it's just like, not only just a cost factor, but the time factor, right? Does it instantly. Okay. Works 24/7. So like, if you just think about that, it should, I hope, start to make sense where we're headed. And what that means is you got to get occupied, and you got to get equipped with the skills needed to be in that direction. Meaning you need to be prompt engineering like a god. You need to start developing more product manager skills, vision skills of what features to build, why to build them, how they can make money for the company that you're working at. No more being protected by daddy because you're a sweetheart and a company that has a lot of money is going to protect you and provide you with safety. right? You want to be somebody who's actually valuable and making sure you're doing things that make that company money. And so if you constantly keep thinking like that, you're going to be a valuable asset to society forever. And you're going to learn these skills like prompt engineering along the way. And so then your coding skills will feed into more of the prompt engineering. And where your coding skills will come into play is when you get into bugs. Using your coding skills, you'll be able to debug. Using your coding knowledge of the sphere of which frameworks to use, what technologies to use, which APIs to potentially use, that kind of creative thinking is still valuable. Now, some of that might go away in 5-10 years because AI will start to have creative thinking too, but that is the valuable asset right now. So think more about that.
Factor of 10,000. This should scare us all.
Wow.
Right? This suggests potentially a very large shift in our industry. I don't think we can ignore this and just write it off and say, well, the AI is not very good today, so therefore it's not going to be good in 5 years. Right? This radically changes how we think about it. The only reason that programmers are paid so much is that it requires years and years and years of education and training and knowledge and specialization to be good at it. But there's no reason that I need to hire a super smart, Harvard-educated student to do this if I can get ChatGPT to do most of the work for me and have a human typing it in.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of other advantages to hiring the robots instead of the humans.
Hey, I already covered all that. Let's go. We already covered all that, baby. But let's see what he says.
Right? Robot's not going to take breaks. The robot is not today expecting free lunches and, on-site massage. That could change. The robot takes the same length of time to generate its code, whether it's the rough proof of concept or the final production-ready code. When you go as a PM to an organization, to your engineering team, and you say, okay, team, there's 8 of you here. We have to ship the billing page. How soon can we do it? You're going to spend at least an hour and a half having the conversation. Well, if we do it quick and dirty, we can maybe do it in 3 weeks. And if it's got to be production ready, give us 12.
That's another thing I didn't think about. That meetings and the back and forth and all that, you can have that with ChatGPT and it's almost instant. You don't have to have that either. You can save all that time that you normally would be wasting on meetings.
Or you can go to the proverbial homework machine, push the button, and have the code right now. Right? And the other thing is, yes, the robot makes mistakes, but those mistakes can happen incredibly quickly to the level of speed where iterate is perfectly fine. You can say to the robot, you know what, this whole thing, 5,000 source files, 20,000 lines of code, whatever it is, blow it away, start over. Boom. 5 seconds later, you have a brand new version of it.
Yep.
Try that with a live human engineer team. Right? So I think this is all like something that we really have to take seriously. I don't think that this is just, I am exaggerating for effect, but the industry is going to change. So, the natural question then is, well, what happens when we cut humans out of the loop? How do we build software? How do we ship product? I found this video on, I think it's Microsoft's website, and it's titled, "What Do Product Managers Do?" That was a little bit of an unintended joke, I think, because as an engineer, we often go, what do product managers do? But if you imagine what the software team of the future might look like.
Well, you saw that Replit tweet that I showed you on Twitter. That PM was killing it at the hackathon. And then based on what he's saying, yeah, look at that, right? You got a PM doing everything. He's actually kind of talking about that right now, right? AI robot makes the code, it generates the code, and then you got the human code reviewer. So honestly, what will be happening is developers will turn into code reviewers. This is why in my course and in my program, I'm training people to think like product managers and then use AI to build stuff and be the one to be able to review the code. Those are the people that are not going to get replaced. This is what's happening, right? Your job as a developer is going to get commoditized, and it's going to be down to you being a human code reviewer. You understand that? You're going to be a fucking spell checker in a few years. So if you want to be complacent and sit down on it and just be like, this is it, I've made it, I'm good, I'm a software developer now, you're going to be demoted to a spell checker, my friend. This is the equivalent of a spell checker. So just be aware of that.
Approach, which is you have a product manager. This is probably still a human, taking the business and the product requirements, the user requirements, and translating them into some form, probably English, maybe a little bit technical English, that you then can provide to the AI, the army of AI code generators. The AI code generators give you a whole bunch of code, and probably for a while still, we still have humans reading and reviewing the code to make sure that it does what it was supposed to do. Now, that read is a little different than what we have today. Today, when we review code, if I have another engineer on my team writing code and I'm reviewing it, standard practice in the industry is to do code review for one another. We don't just check in code. We read each other's code. We make detailed comments on it. We suggest improvements, cleanups, clarifications, comments, documentation. In this case, it's not absolutely essential that this code be maintainable by a human. I think for a while we're going to want that, right? Most people are not going to feel comfortable just letting the robots do all the coding. But at some point, as long as I can convince myself that the code does what it's supposed to do.
I mean, it's kind of like AI cars. Cars that drive on autopilot without needing a driver. In order for humanity to get used to it, I mean, it'll take some time. It'll be scary. You'll sit in an Uber ride and you wouldn't feel comfortable driving to downtown with no driver there and the car driving itself. It will freak most people out. Marquez Brownlee, or am I saying his name right? Or am I just making it up? MKBHD. Okay, maybe I'm saying his name wrong, but MKBHD. He made a video where he was driving a Tesla and it was riding it automatically and his heart rate was like elevated up to 140 beats per minute. That is something that clearly shows you he's scared. And that's the fear that we're going to have for a while, right? But just like a child learns to walk and learns to ride a bike, the first time you rode a bike, your heart was beating and you were scared. The first time you were crossing the street, you were probably scared. Just like that, you know, the first time you go to an interview, it doesn't mean all those things are bad for you. The first time you public speak, you're scared. The first time you raise your hand and answer a question, or the teacher calls on you and you answer, you're scared. Just like that. We're going to be scared initially to give up control for the code to the AI. But if you saw your friend ride in a autopilot car, now you'll be a little bit less scared. Now, if you saw 10 of your friends do that, you'll be a little less scared. Now, if you found out that your entire family and all your friends have been riding in autopilot cars for years, you'll be less scared. If you found out, you know, there's millions of people now doing it, you'll be less scared. If you saw reviews, you'll start to be less scared. If you watch other people doing it on YouTube, you'll be less scared. And so the more accepted it gets, the more of a social norm it becomes, the less scary it becomes. So in this case, with this situation here, the programming being changed and taken over by AI, we'll start to give up more and more control and be less and less scared. As it can show us, it can do a good job and get us from point A to point B without us getting into a car crash and dying.
I don't really care how messy it is. I don't really care how it's structured. I don't really care how reusable it is. All of those factors are only because poor humans have to wrangle with this stuff. Right? Oh, it needs to be modular. We need to have abstraction boundaries. Right? All the things, you know, sophomore level computer science, right? Why? For the sake of poor humans having to deal with this complex code base. But if the robots are the ones generating it and we don't really need to maintain it in a conventional way, why not just generate the code you need? It doesn't really matter if it's duplicative or repetitive or modular or nicely abstracted. Doesn't matter. Does the job.
Yeah, I agree.
So one of my hypotheses around why everyone has been freaking out about ChatGPT is because unlike other industries, this revolution seemed to occur overnight.
That's what I'm talking about. This is why I'm getting the fucking hate. It's crazy. Psychopaths. Insane. I've never experienced that before, but they're going crazy. It's like horde, mob. But come at me. I don't give a shit. You know, if you want to do that, I'm happy to have an open discourse and open dialogue. That's the beautiful thing about the world and our country. We're allowed to have freedom of speech. So I welcome that. But yeah, it's sudden. It happened overnight. I want to let him speak on this more.
You're like a AI professor and have really been following the literature for years and years and years. To most of us, myself included, this seemed to just go from, AI was kind of crappy to AI was amazing, literally overnight, right?
Yep.
So to use an analogy, this would be as if the field of computer graphics went from Pong to Red Dead Redemption 2 in the span of about 3 months.
Yes, that is a brilliant analogy.
Right? People's heads would explode if that happened. Right? But that's not what happened in graphics, right? In graphics, it took decades to get to this point, and everyone could see it gradually getting better and better and better. I remember when Toy Story came out, and that was like the first CG movie. People's minds just melted watching that. They were like, whoa! And now we watch it, and you just like, oh, yeah, that's cute. I could render that on my laptop in Scratch or whatever, right? The other thing that's happened, I think, in this field that's interesting, and there's a big societal shift happening, is the dialogue around our expectations of what AI can achieve. And so in 1972, Hubert Dreyfus wrote this book, What Computers Can't Do. And this was at the dawn of the PC era, and there was a lot of popular press and dialogue around this sort of scaremongering around AI. And we had movies come out like War Games. Does anybody remember that? I think War Games, by the way, that movie is why I'm a computer scientist. Right? I was like, I want to be Matthew Broderick.
I gotta watch that movie.
In this room with like all these monitors and my like analog modem and hacking into the school computer. Like that was me as a kid. So at this time, I think a lot of people were saying, well, hold on a minute. Computers are fundamentally dumb and they can't do these things and they never will. And that was the thesis of this book here. And I think that was the sort of consensus view, right? We sort of calmed down a little bit about the technology. We all kind of realized, yeah, okay, VisiCalc is not going to put me out of a job, right? But now fast forward 2014, I highly recommend this book if you haven't read it by Nick Bostrom called Superintelligence. This is a book that wrestles in a tremendous amount of detail with the philosophical and
It's called Superintelligence, by the way. I mean, yeah, okay, you could see it, my bad.
the moral questions of how does human society respond to an AI that is more intelligent than humans? And I know we've got a lot of sci-fi around that topic, but this is a very serious academic work about what does it mean for our society if we have AI that is smarter than us. And people are taking that very seriously today. So I think my point being that the dialogue that we've been having in society at large has shifted away from
Like this stuff, I'm a little less, I'm not like a theoretician. I'm a practical builder. And so I'm excited about what I can build today with AI. And that's what I want to share with you guys, right? That using these tools, you can be building apps today, regardless of if you have coding skills or not. And you can learn specifically the skills you need on the fly with AI helping you. But like today, there's no reason that you can't be freaking Iron Man. Everybody's an Iron Man today with their Jarvis. That's how it feels to me, at least when I go into ChatGPT and I start building apps with it. So I want to just open your minds to that. And I want you to be practical, right? Be a practical builder. I mean, all this theory stuff is cool. Like, what if we have robots everywhere and we feel like slaves? And what if the robots kill us? Sure, we're going to die anyways, right, at some point. So I'm much more interested in what we could practically do with the tools that we have today and in the next couple of years, what that looks like.
From AI as a toy to AI might actually destroy society. So let's just talk rapidly about the future, the evolution of programming as I see it. So, in the dawn of time, we had humans directly writing machine instructions and, inputting them with toggle switches and stuff like that, right?
This is exactly what I was talking about earlier in the video.
That was before programming and the programs in higher level languages.
Yep, and then he goes, then we went higher level languages. That's why I'm skipping through a little bit because we already kind of talked about this point that he's making right now.
That's Bjorn Strausdorp, who invented C++.
So we went from like toggling switches to now C++.
And in modern times, we have a world in which humans are writing their code, but they're heavily assisted by AI. And they can get away with things like, well, I'll just write a comment and have the AI write the code for me, right?
Yes.
But my claim is that the future of this really is skipping the programming step entirely.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it. I love that photo actually because it just sparked an idea in my head. But AI is a new child. It's basically just like how you train. So, for example, right, I could become a programmer or I could have a child, inspire the child to become a programmer, and then he or she becomes a programmer in the next 18, 21 years. And then goes on and becomes an epic programmer, right? But then there's all this time and cost and so much random shit, right? Where with AI, there isn't that. Like you teach the AI model how to think or how to solve a problem, and like you could inspire an AI probably in the future to become a computer scientist, and then it goes on to become a computer scientist, and then it goes on to become the best computer scientist in the world, and it goes on to build the best apps, and all of that happens within maybe a couple of minutes, maybe within a week, you know, just like the AI that sat down, that taught itself chess, and then 24 hours later, it beat Magnus Carlsen, who's the #1 chess player in the world.
A lot of people who've read my article on this topic, it was in the CAC, misinterpreted it as saying, AI is going to write code for us, therefore programmers should not exist. I'm not saying that.
That's very important, so I'm going to repeat that.
AI is going to write code for us, therefore programmers should not exist.
Okay, so this is my point that I've been saying. Even if traditional speaking programming is going to die, right? I have to write a headline to get people's attention. That's what everybody does. But it's not that it's not true. It's that programmers' role will shift heavily. And I want to catch your attention by shocking you. And then I want to show you what's the way that you can go. So this is exactly what he's saying, where programmers, isn't that programmers shouldn't exist, but programmers are going to evolve to prompt engineering and building apps. They're going to get promoted into a product manager role where they're going to be product managers and maybe even human reviewers, you know, code reviewers, or they're going to have human code reviewers underneath them. But that's, I believe, where the shift will be going.
I'm not saying that. I'm actually saying something much worse, which is you won't have to have programs at all. You just tell the language model what you want, and it directly computes the result.
He went even one step further than me.
There's no program step. And I think that opens up, it is an interesting challenge for our field, but I think it opens up a tremendous opportunity, because now the question is, how do I effectively teach these models what to do? Coming back to my example earlier of having to use the words do not in all caps, what are the best practices? And beyond best practices, can we turn this from effectively a dark art into a science, into
That is actually one of the things that I discovered when I was doing. So these are the skills you're going to need to develop. And I agree with him where he's going with this. But when I was building my own app, a lot of the time that I spent was discovering the dark arts of how to coax and coerce and guide ChatGPT into the app that I was trying to get it to build. And it was me just learning all these tricky prompt engineering hacks. The one, for example, he shared with you where he writes do not in caps, and that enforces a certain behavior. Then, you know, for example, I was teaching it I was giving it certain examples of things it should be able to do or things it shouldn't be able to do. But then what happened was when I was giving it those examples, it started adding specific text from those examples in everything that it did. So it started having a bias because of the example. And I was like, damn, that's also what I didn't want. So then I had to like keep tweaking it until I got the answer that I wanted. And so there's a back and forth dance. And that's where I'm saying you need to be spending time in, because that's where I was spending time in. And it's like, it's creativity and science combined on how you can get it to do the thing that you want it to do. That's where I believe where we're headed and where you're going to get the most value.
To an engineering discipline. And people have talked about prompt engineering as a thing. I think that's meant kind of tongue-in-cheek. It's not really, prompt engineering is not really a thing yet, but it may well be in the future if we do this right. So one of the things that people often say about these models is that there's no way they can do anything interesting or creative because all they're doing is auto-completing based on large corpora of text that they've seen and been trained on.
That's bullshit. I've done, like, it's true in terms of they have been trained on historical data, but I've had it solve a lot of unique problems that have never been solved anywhere before. And it was able to put those things together. And so I know firsthand that that's not the case.
I beg to differ. Now, we obviously don't really know what's going on inside these models, but if you ask a large language model to take a complex problem and effectively run a computation, that is to manipulate a model of the world in its mind. In this case, I've come up with a simple problem here. I've said, I've got 3 stacks of cards, red, green, and blue cards, and they're all shuffled up in the following way. Please tell me how to lay them out into 3 stacks, 1 red, 1 green, 1 blue. Simple problem, right? A child could do this. Now, the key phrase here was, as was discovered not long ago, a few months ago, you have to say the words, the magic words. Let's think step by step. If you say that to the model, that somehow triggers it to go into computation mode now. It's no longer just parroting back some answer. It's actually going to say, okay, well, I have to actually elucidate each of my instructions. And so it does it, absolutely does it.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it's able to manipulate some kind of internal model of this stack of cards that I described and tell me exactly how it's going to work and it's correct, is fascinating to me. It's not hard to trip it up. There's plenty of places you can give it a problem and it's going to immediately fall over and go, sorry, it's going to give back bogus results. So the question is, why? What do we do in this case? How do we understand what the limits of these models are? So I do think that over time, we're going to get to a place where programming ends up getting replaced by teaching these models new skills.
Yes. So programming would get replaced by teaching these new models new skills.
And teaching them how to interface to APIs and pulling data from databases and transforming data and how to interact with software meant for humans. Mm-hmm. That's going to become an entire discipline right there. And one way of thinking about where this might go is what I like to call the natural language computer.
Like, for example, I wanted to use V9 of Firebase, which is the newest version of Firebase. I couldn't do it because ChatGPT had a cutoff or something, and so ChatGPT didn't know about the newest version of Firebase. It knew about the old version of Firebase, I believe V8. And I got it to write my code, but it wrote it all in V8, the older version. And so it kind of threw my entire app off because my app was requiring that I put it into V9. And I tried to look online, and there wasn't a lot of great, there was some documentation, but I needed ChatGPT how to convert from V8 to V9. I needed to teach it how to convert that. And there was a guide by Fireship that shows you exactly an example in V8, and then right underneath it, an example in V9 for things like adding things to the database, deleting things, editing things, adding one thing, adding multiple things, etc. And I took that guide and I gave it to ChatGPT, and I'm like, these are the instructions on how to go from V8 to V9. And I just then let it run. And after it ran, it learned V9, how V9 works. And that's exactly how you would teach a human. That's exactly how I teach myself. And ever since then, my ChatGPT had learned how V9 works. So then anytime I asked it to write code, it would just give me in the V9 form that I asked for. So it was something new that it learned. And that was, I thought, a very cool application of this exact thing. And that's the skill that you will need to start focusing on developing, skills like that.
So the von Neumann architecture has served us well for many decades. This is the new architecture. And the new architecture, you give it a program in natural language. You use a language model that then can call out to external systems and software as peripherals. It can store results and tasks in its memory, assisted by things like vector databases and so forth. Mm-hmm. And it can run autonomously in a cycle, executing this program, creating tasks, accessing outside data sources, generating new knowledge, and so forth. And tons of people are out there, and we are too, building things that effectively work this way. And I think this is kind of a new computational architecture that we see emerging right now. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we don't have it right, nobody has it right, but we're seeing the inklings of it. right? What we have today is kind of the, like the equivalent of, I don't know, the PDP-11 or the Apple I of this architecture coming together. So I'm legally mandated to pitch my startup.
Okay, so before he goes into his pitch. Yeah, so basically when I look at this, let's go to the actual photo of this. So yeah, basically large language model will need a way to interface with the outside world. And this is where external tools, peripherals come in. So let's say you ask ChatGPT to make an app that can tell user the weather, okay, what the current weather is in their city. ChatGPT doesn't have that data offhand, right? It won't know the weather today or the weather tomorrow, etc. And so ChatGPT, the natural language program, will go out to an API and then ping that API, and that API will get the weather data, etc. It'll do all the tasks it needs to do to get that, and then it'll store it in memory. And ChatGPT will use something like a vector database. You don't have to worry about it. Basically, it gives it like long-term memory, so ChatGPT can remember even after a long conversation what the weather was, etc. And then ChatGPT will be able to show that back to the user. So that's an example of how you could build a program with it.
Apple I.
But that the coding part, right, the API part and tasks part, all of that will be handled automatically. So here's what we're going to do, because I have a meeting right now. We're going to turn this into part 1. So we'll say this is part 1 of end of programming. And, especially with large language models there. And if you enjoyed it, let me know and comment below asking part 2. Okay, if you comment below part 2, I will drop part 2 of this, because they'll tell me you guys are looking forward to that. And outside of that, I just want to let you know, again, if you want to build apps with AI and ChatGPT, we're doing that. Okay, we have so many students that if I go you the wins, they're building their apps. We just had a student build his first app 16 hours ago. We have all these other students that are building their own apps, right? We have a huge community. We have students who are not only building their first app, but actually even selling their first app. And so Kyle actually made his first sale of the app that he built, right? And we have these students building these apps within minutes at times. And the results of all of them are absolutely incredible. And the list just goes on, right? Like Helm goes, I finished the first app in about 30 minutes. So if you want to get these skills and learn exactly like these students did, right? Jeanette goes, my dream was to be a programmer. I'm 52 and I've not made that dream a reality. And one day with this program, I built my first app. So if you want to learn how to do that, I put together a free training for you. Click the link below and go watch that training. Absolutely unbelievable. It's only 19 minutes long and it has the potential to change your entire life. So I recommend go click that, watch it. I love your beautiful face, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.